Hey everyone, Chris here for Thomann Guitars and Basses. In today's Guitar Tech Tips, I'm here joined by Dave at the Martin factory. This is the original factory in the North Street in Nazareth. And Dave is going to help us to understand our Martin guitars best, how to take care of them, how to maintain them, and how to make sure they play like a dream. Dave.
Hi.
Thanks so much for joining me.
Yeah, of course. Welcome to Nazareth.
This is quite a place. The original factory, right?
Original factory, been here since 1857. And we're in a place where we actually used to build guitars back then, so pretty crazy, right?
Let's talk about the guitar from headstock to bridge and body and everything. Let's go from left to right and see what you would recommend doing in terms of setup or maintenance.
I actually prefer to start from the headstock down. There are a lot of different ways you can go about it and measure things, but I feel like it's important to start with this area first, because if you move things here while this is still out of balance, then you can actually get it more correct, right? If you move things here when this is wrong, you're gonna make a mess of things. So we definitely want to start up here with the nut. The nut definitely has to be at a specific height and a specific depth. Otherwise you can get some string buzzing up there with it buzzing open before you even fret anything. If you play the note and the string will buzz, then it's a good indication that your nut may be a little bit worn. The tolerances here are really, really tight. You have to have room for the string to buzz, or not buzz, the string to vibrate so it doesn't buzz rather. But you don't want it to be so high where it's hard to play. So it's a fine line to walk. Also,
if it's too high, then the first fret is going to be sharp.
Exactly.
You put it out of tune, basically.
Exactly. When that's the whole thing with doing a setup. Again, if you measure at the 12th fret, which we'll get to in a little bit, and then decide to take down the saddle, which again we'll get to in a minute, without checking things in here, again, your intonation can be bad and your whole guitar is out of balance. So we want to try to avoid that. So an easy way to check to make sure that your nut is actually the correct height, you just, while your guitar has strings on it, if you take your pinky or your ring finger, whichever one you're comfortable with, take your little finger and hold down that string, and then you're going to take your index finger and bounce just like that. And you should see some movement there. If you see when I'm not even touching it, if it's laying on that first fret, again, it's an indication that your nut is worn and will probably need to either be filled or replaced entirely. Now that we see that the nut is correct, the next thing to move on to is this area here. Now, for those of you that may or may not know, the vast majority of our guitars these days have an adjustable truss rod in them. They come with either a 5mm or a 4mm wrench, depending on the model, to adjust that rod. And there's actually a hole right here that you go through the sound hole to do that. Again, as with any of these movements and things that I'm mentioning, I don't know that if you're an experienced person and you feel confident in doing these things yourself, that's fine. I would always recommend taking things to a licensed professional because a lot of times you can do more harm than good. I've seen that a lot. Things that you can look for to see if you need to take it to a professional. Again, since the nut, we've already taken care of that and made sure that's correct. Now we're going to work on this area. So your neck has a habit of moving, right? And humidity and temperature can certainly play a factor in that. So if it's really, really hot and humid, with this being under such string tension, the guitar is going to want to implode, fold into itself. So this can all stretch out and you could have a big hollow in your neck. And again, that's going to make your action feel really high. It's going to be hard to play. The intonation could be bad, all of those things. Adversely, if it's really cold, really dry, things will shrink. It is wood, right? So things will shrink and you'll get the neck to be round. And then you're going to be noticing, well, the guitar's buzzing and doesn't sound clear when I'm playing it. So maybe we need to adjust it back the other way. So I'm going to show you another quick way to measure that. So sort of in the same way as we checked the nut slot depth, we're going to check to see the amount of hollow or roundness in the neck itself. So the easy way to do that, again, we're just going to use the low E string for reference. You're going to hold down the first string at the first fret. You're going to take your little finger of your right hand and hold down at the 13th fret, same string. Okay. And then we're going to bounce around the 7th fret and just tap like that. Now again, If you had a third hand, you would take a business card or something like that, and that's about as much clearance as you want.
Yeah.
You could call it about a 64th of clearance there. But you can see it, and again, you can hear it's bouncing a little bit. What you don't want to see, and I'm going to exaggerate here, is if it's bouncing like that, then obviously you've got a huge hollow in it, and the neck is going to be adjusted. Same thing, again, if it doesn't bounce at all, like that's laying on the frets, then it's an indication that it's round, and you're going to want to have it adjusted the other way.
What's interesting is that you push down the neck right there where the truss rod stops, right?
More or less, yeah.
About that part, because this section of an acoustic guitar doesn't have the support of the truss rod. So what makes sense, in case anyone's wondering why Dave didn't go like way up with his other finger, it's because this section is a little bit independent of the rest of the fretboard.
Correct.
In a way.
Yeah, on most electric guitars, the neck is a separate piece, right? And the truss rod will run the entire length of the neck. With our necks, they basically stop right at the body. So this piece of the fingerboard is actually just sitting on the top of the guitar. There's braces and things underneath there to support that area. But yeah, the geometry from here to here is definitely from the geometry from here to here. It's definitely different. So yeah, you definitely do not want to necessarily measure in here.
Yeah, yeah.
The next thing that I'd like to do is actually measure at the 12th fret. There's a lot of different ways you can do that. If you have a ruler, I mean, my favorite way to do it is just to have a ruler that measures in 30 seconds. Okay. I'm not sure, I mean, I guess you can measure it also in millimeters. For those of you who use millimeters, which is everybody, I would assume. So here in Nazareth, we set the majority of our guitars up at 330 seconds, which turns out to be about 94 thousandths.
Okay.
Right? That's math, right?
Yeah,
okay.
that is.
So that should be that at the 12th fret and at the on the bass side. On the treble side, you want it to be 230 seconds or about 63 thousandths.
Okay.
So you measure it literally right at the 12th fret. The distance between the top of the fret and the bottom of the string is what you're looking for. Now these adjustments here that we made may get that correct, and you might not need to do anything else. But if you find that this part's all correct, and the action is still either high or low, we still have another option, and that's when we move down here to the bridge. Now what you see here is this white piece that we have is called the saddle, and it can be made out of a bunch of different materials. Typically we use bone here, sometimes we use tusk. What you would do at that point, you would either have to raise or lower this piece. Now on a guitar like a D18, that's fairly simple because you just take the strings off and pull this piece out, and you either replace it with a higher one, whichever height you might need, or you have to sand some off the bottom.
Yeah.
With some other guitars that we have, like our Authentics, for example, if you're familiar with our Authentic series, they'll have a glued-in saddle. So it's easy if you need to go lower because you can just file or sand off the top. But you got to keep the radius correct, right? If you need to go up, then you need to actually probably route that saddle out or heat it and pull it out because it is glued, and then replace it with a bone blank and have a professional shape it.
Yeah,
it's a whole thing.
It's not something I'd recommend doing at home.
And
For sure.
and years ago, all of our guitars had those. So you can imagine, if you're at a gig and you need a saddle change, it's not the easiest thing. So this is a little bit simpler. And again, our saddles are compensated for better intonation, for more consistent intonation as well.
And there's one more thing about the top of acoustic guitars. That's the most sensitive part of the acoustic guitar.
Absolutely, yeah.
In terms of humidity, for sure, right?
Yeah, and again, just like I mentioned with the neck, humidity and temperature will absolutely affect this, probably more so than the neck, because you have a lot of really thin pieces of wood here that are glued together to give it its stability and the resonance and everything that you hear. Our finish is porous. There's no finish on the inside of the guitar.
The whole inside is open.
Right, so these guitars really breathe a lot. And different species of wood can breathe differently and they can react differently. So you may have, if you have a collection of guitars, for example, even if you have 5 D18s, again, which is what this is, you could have 5 D18s in your house and each one could be reacting slightly differently because they're different trees. They're cut from different trees, and each one is going to react a little bit differently with a different cell structure and everything. So again, there are definitely things you can look for, which we'll show you, to see how things are moving. This is an interesting thing. This is a thing that I like to recommend to everybody while we're on the subject before I even get into that. There are a lot of myths about acoustic guitars, and I'm curious what your opinion of this is. You have no idea what I'm about to say, so this is fun. I am a proponent of, if you're not going to play your guitar for about a week or so at a time, to take the string tension off of it.
Okay.
Now again, the reason that I recommend that is because, first of all, I say a week because a week will turn into 2 weeks really quickly, which will turn into a month, which will turn into, I haven't played my guitar in forever. This thing is still under a lot of string tension. When I say a lot, with medium gauge strings, you're looking at about 170 pounds PSI, right, of this thing just pulling on itself. And if there are humidity problems or other things going on with that string tension, it's going to make it worse. So if it's really humid, for example, now everything's getting soft, and you have all of that string tension, the next time you go to pull your guitar out, you can have things like the bridge coming loose, the top bellying up, all kinds of bad things. We don't want bad things. So I say that because there are a lot of myths that say you cannot take string tension off of guitars. They'll actually go back the other way, spring back the other way. They're meant to have tension.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I get it. They were built to endure that and to resist that. But, I've never seen a guitar being destroyed only because there were no strings on it.
Right.
So
I will tell you personally, I have about 50 guitars in the house, and every one of them sits without string tension on them. I mean, I can't obviously cycle through 50 guitars every day.
Whenever you choose one, you will,
absolutely
put new strings on there.
And my guitars, for the most part, require little to no maintenance. And I have guitars that are well over 100 years old to newer things. So everything in between, different species of woods, right? So I definitely recommend that. So, but even without string tension on it, the guitar's still going to react to these humidity changes, right? So obviously, if you give it a lot of water, if the humidity is too high, everything's going to puff up. Again, that's going to make your action, your playability high. It's going to make it hard to play. While I'm on the subject, we recommend a humidity range, a relative humidity range of about 45 to 55%, which seems like a small range. But
it's actually a lot.
It
big
is.
Difference between that.
And again, the words I'm using specifically. I did say range. I did not say we recommend you keep our guitars at 47%. Because that's not reality. Again, as I mentioned before, every guitar is made from a different piece of wood, and everyone reacts differently. So you may have a guitar that loves it at 45%. In the same room, you might have a guitar that loves it at 65%. Right? If you have those two guitars switched, right, in their environments, you're going to have one that's dried out. You're going to have one that's over-humidified in the same room. And that's common. So one way to combat that is I always recommend keeping things in cases.
That's
always. And this is not, while I'm talking about it too, this is not just a Martin thing. This is a acoustic guitar thing. These guys do definitely react to humidity. Again, it's an open box with really delicate wood, which is again why they sound the way that they do. But it makes them susceptible to a lot of those kinds of things. So, bring it back around to how to check for high humidity. Just since we're here, I was looking for a straight edge, so I found this, which is actually a handmade fret position marker for a mandolin that was dated in 1903. So I'm gonna use it now as a tool to check the top. Right. So the easiest way to do it. So underneath the strings, between the sound hole and the bridge, just lay something across there. So you should not see space on the outside, a lot of space where it looks like this is rocking, because that'll tell you that the top is up. Why that's a little bit different and why I'm measuring here and not here, you're gonna have a natural belly that happens back here from the string tension pulling. And sometimes that also causes this to kind of
come with it.
Well, it'll sink down here because you have that tilt happening, which a little bit of that is normal. If your bridge is kind of at a 90-degree angle, that's bad. We don't want that. But that's an easy way to check for high humidity. Just put a straight edge, something like that on there, and you can check for that. The opposite, actually, I do for low humidity. I will check that back here, which this isn't long enough to go back, because as I said, you would have a natural belly here. If you're putting a straight edge back here and you see that now there's a hollow here, and it's touching on the ends, now you have the opposite thing happening where the top is sinking.
Yeah.
And there are other ways to see it just besides putting a straight edge with it being dry. If you have a full gloss instrument like this is, and you start seeing that the finish is starting to dry in, that's the wood looking for any kind of moisture it can find. So that's a first sign. If you're playing and it's buzzing a lot, that's another sign. Yeah. Don't ignore that. The next thing that inevitably happens is you're going to have a crack in the top.
Yeah, that's not good.
And it's going to find the path of least resistance. Usually it's along the center seam here, which, again, for those of you who don't know, all of our tops are two pieces that are book matched because spruce trees aren't this big. So that they're two pieces that are book matched, and it'll find whatever is the weakest grain, and you'll have a split there. So we want to avoid all of these things.
All right, let's talk about nitro finishes. You mentioned nitro sinking in when wood is too dry. Nitro is without doubt, my favorite finish type. It has its little sensitive things though.
Sure.
So what would you do to maintain it, to keep it clean? What's up with satin and gloss finishes, etc.? What would you recommend?
So if you notice, and I'll tip the guitar up so you can see, this is a full gloss instrument, right? And we'll show that pretty mahogany back as well. You can see it here that the finish on the body is definitely different from the finish on the neck. So while they are both nitro based, this is a catalyzed satin finish, but it's still lacquer.
Okay.
So as we were discussing earlier, with cleaning things, you will notice the more you play, because it's lacquer, it will shine up. And that's perfectly normal. Just for normal maintenance, I would always recommend when you're done playing, just take a dry cloth such as that and just wipe it down, because your hands has oils in it. Just wipe the oils down, especially if you were snacking while you were playing, right?
Yeah.
We want to get that off of there to keep everything clean. If there is something on there, say you were playing outside on a hot day, right? It's not the worst thing to take a damp cloth and you can wipe it down with just water. If you do have something on it, maybe bug spray, sunscreen, those kinds of things.
Oh, yeah.
We do have products to specifically clean satin finish. While I'm in the area talking about the neck, we can talk about cleaning products for the fingerboard, right? Yeah. So the fingerboard and the bridge, different from all the rest of the wood that you can see minus what's on the inside, there's no finish on those. So they will absorb oils and whatever else. They'll also dry a lot quicker. So we do have different things that we use to condition the fingerboard and the bridge. We do have some things I would recommend not using, like lemon oil or anything very acidic. Those things are not good for the finish if it gets on the finish.
Okay. It's not because of the rosewood, it's because of everything around it.
Correct. So we want to try to avoid acid if we can. So with the gloss finish on the body, again, same thing. You want to use a dry cloth to clean things up when you're done playing. Get a lot of buildup in this area, right, with your arm rubbing on it and everything. Damp cloth, if you get a little bit of buildup on there. We do have cleaning products, cleaner polish that we use, that we recommend. While I'm touching on that, and again, with all the nitro finish, watch out for anything with silicone in it.
Okay.
Straps, stands, tuners that have silicone on them, capos, any of those kinds of things, they will burn into the finish.
Yeah.
Just because from the chemicals and everything, so you want to try to avoid that stuff. But like little buildup and things, you're not going to get dents or scratches out with that kind of thing, but it'll get the shine back. And definitely spray it on the rag. Don't spray it right on the guitar. You want to use it sparingly, otherwise you get a lot of buildup on, and then that could make more of a mess than you probably intend anyway.
Exactly.
Right? One of the really unique things about guitar is if I pick this up and play it and then hand it to you and you play it, the guitar is going to sound completely different.
Totally, yeah,
right?
yeah.
So they're very organic with the person that's playing them. And even though we have an idea of how we want them to sound here, that doesn't necessarily mean that's the way it needs to stay. I build my own guitars as well. I also build cars and motorcycles, so I love hot rodding things.
Gotcha.
You can certainly do that with these. The easiest way to do that is just change strings. Actually, that might be the second easiest. The first easiest way is to just use a different pick. If you use a pick, just the material on the pick and how it attacks the strings will completely change the tone of the guitar.
Absolutely.
So the second thing is changing the strings. We make a bunch of different kinds of strings between phosphor bronze and like 90-20 phosphor, or 90-10 phosphor bronze, 80-20 phosphor bronze, nickel, all kinds. There's so many different strings on the market, and the reason and we offer a lot of them. And again, if you didn't know, we make our own strings in-house and have for quite some time. Make really, really good strings. I highly recommend them. If you haven't checked them out yet, please do. Beyond that, these guys here, the bridge pins that hold the strings down into the bridge, is a really simple way to change the tonality of the guitar. Most of the guitars that we offer will come with plastic bridge pins, as this does. We have different colors of plastic. And you'll get a pretty round sustain, a pretty round sound with it. If you want to use ebony pins, for example, that's going to darken everything, obviously, because it's a more organic material. If you like the whole organic thing and you want to do that and soften it, you can do that. If you want to brighten it up and get a lot more sustain, we have that.
Okay.
So these are liquid metal.
Okay.
Which, if you pull one out, you can definitely feel the weight of that.
Yeah.
For a bridge pin, that's pretty heavy.
It's like aluminum.
Yeah. So it will definitely brighten up the guitar a bit. It will definitely absolutely add to sustain. That is, once we came out with these, that was a quick hot rod that I did with mine.
Okay.
And that's, again, not to say that everything works on every guitar, right? Everything reacts differently. And it's an easy experiment. You're not cutting things apart. You know what I mean?
So you don't modify anything. Really.
Right. So it's an easy thing to try. You put them in there and you're like, oh, I love that. I don't really like it so much. Switch it back.
Or use it on another guitar. Maybe it works on that.
You can use it on another guitar, absolutely. Oddly enough, you can even kind of mix them. So we actually had an artist signature model several years ago where the E, A, and D strings were plastic pins. The G, B, and E strings, he used brass. Because he wanted the top strings when he's playing leads to be even brighter than this. He did a lot of finger picking as well. So to have that kind of jump out.
The melody jump out,
Exactly. So that was how we offered the signature model. So there's really a lot of different ways, and that's a simple way to just modify it.
So cool. Dave, thanks a lot.
Oh, no, my pleasure.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.
You guys take it easy, of course. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. Write some comments if you have any questions or anything you want to add to that. We'll check those comments out, of course, down there in the comment section. See you in the next video. Bye-bye.